So, number 47 in the RCA albums collection represents a point in Elvis's life where, even though he had basically sort of started having a waning interest in recording, there was still one particular type of music or topic of music, genre of music, that could challenge him and engage him enough that if you got him in the studio and could get him to record it, you would have some sublime stuff. And that, of course, was his gospel music. He Touched Me is Elvis's third gospel album after His Hand in Mine and How Great Thou Art. Technically his fourth. There was actually another album on the Camden series called You'll Never Walk Alone, which is not in this RCA albums collection. And that was an assortment of other inspirational and gospel songs that had come up in between How Great Thou Art in this one. So this, well, technically his fourth, this is his third in the canon of the box set, and also as far as the back of the album is concerned, it only takes two into consideration as official gospel albums. That being said, much like the Christmas album in the 70s was a different beast from the 50s Christmas album, this is very much a different beast from His Hand in Mine and How Great Thou Art. Elvis is not afraid to back off the lead vocals. You can tell that he is very much channeling the gospel groups that he was influenced by growing up in Memphis. Songs like Lead Me, Guide Me, I, John, A Thing Called Love, Reach Out to Jesus, Amazing Grace. There are songs on this album where you halfway wonder if Elvis is actually even singing on them. And then you'll hear it a little bit in the mix, and you'll go, ah, yeah, there you go. There's footage out there of the Imperials doing a version of A Thing Called Love. It's a Jerry Reed song, not really a gospel song, but it appears on this album. But they did a version during the making of That's the Way It Is, and as a test footage, the camera crew shot the Imperials doing A Thing Called Love. And if you find that footage, the arrangement is identical to the version on the album. The only difference is that Elvis isn't on it. And honestly, you could argue it really doesn't, like, that's really an Imperial song on this album that happens to feature Elvis, which is interesting. This is not Elvis taking the lead. This is Elvis being part of a larger whole. And I think that's interesting from the point of view of he's finding solace in this music, as he always did throughout his life, but actually laying to record some of that great group music with all those rich harmonies that I mean, that's why he picked the Imperials to perform with him. Was that he loved that feeling. The story goes, I mean, he always wanted to be in one of those gospel groups, whether that was four or five members, and he tried out for one when he was younger, and he got rejected. And so then he ended up going off and ended up at Sun Records and became a thing. But I don't think he ever really let go of that desire to be a part of that. And I know that there are a lot of people who have issues with his, what they would call more bombastic arrangements in the 70s. Some of that is the style of the 70s itself. If you go and listen to some of Tom Jones's stuff in the 70s, or like, what's another one? Yeah, Tom Jones's one, I would say. Maybe Glenn Campbell. as well in the 70s, very similar to what Elvis was doing at the time. And that was disappointing to some fans who had seen Elvis get back to rock and roll in 1968, and then it kind of dipped off a little bit after That's the Way It Is. And there are a number of reasons why, and a lot of speculation as to why. And I don't think there's one definitive answer, but the one that the thing that I think is most apparent is that the music that he was performing resonated with him, and that's the thing with He Touched Me, is that you can tell, much like with his previous 2 gospel albums, and even the 4 gospel selections on the Christmas album, his first Christmas album, you can tell that this music means something to him, and that came through because he won a Grammy for this album. This is the second album that Elvis ever won a Grammy for. In fact, the one of 2. There were 3 Grammys he won, and this was one of them. And for good reason. It's a very fantastic album. So if you have not heard this album, much like I would actually recommend listening to His Hand in Mine, How Great Thou Art, and He Touched Me in order, those 3 albums together, because they show a very neat progression of him. In fact, I would throw in also the medley from the 68 Comeback Special in the middle of between How Great Thou Art and this one, to show up the progression of how he developed his gospel music. Because he was really, in fact, I think, honestly, if he had lived, we would have seen so much more of this side of him as he grew older. We definitely did of like Johnny Cash, and I think he would have very much followed in Cash's footsteps as far as going to gospel music. So that's He Touched Me.